Meeting to order, and Representative Brooks Coleman will open us with the prayer. If you'll hit, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's pray, please. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today just thanking you so much, dear God, first of all, for living in this great country, and we're so thankful that we have the opportunity to be on this committee that helps to look after your creations, what you've given us, the wonderful lands, the parks, and everything. We ask that you be with this committee today as we listen to this legislation, as we deliberate, we think about it, and please give us the wisdom, the strength, and the knowledge to do what's right for the people of this great state. Be with us now, guide us, and take care of us and everyone here. For these ask these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Good morning, everyone. If you will, as a reminder early on, if we're getting to the part of the session when things move rather quickly, so we'll post all information and announcements on our bulletin, and we will get out our notices as things happen. I am going to ask now for the report from Environmental Quality Subcommittee.
Madam Chair, the Environmental Quality Subcommittee. You need a microphone, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Environmental Quality Subcommittee of Natural Resources and Environment met on February the 20th, 2018 to pass two bills. First, after a careful review of HB 879, the subcommittee submits a recommendation do pass by committee substitute. Second, the subcommittee met twice on HB 332. After hearing the concerns of members and working with the author, the subcommittee voted to recommend do pass by committee substitute.
Thank you. And also a report from Vice Chair, Resource Management number 23.
23. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the Resource Management Subcommittee of Natural Resources and Environment met on February 20th, 2018. After reviewing HB 885 and working with the author to revise the bill's language, the subcommittee recommends a recommendation of do pass by committee substitute.
Thank you. We have both our reports to the full committee, so we have three bills before the committee. I believe, looking at the length of time, I think we might have debate on some issues. We will go ahead and take up House Bill 879 at this point in time. And the bill should be in our legislators' folders.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and committee members. Thank you, Madam Chairman and committee members. To be sure we're all working on the same document, we're looking at LC 440805 ERS. To be sure we're all good. I'm going to be very brief this morning. I think the committee is probably tired of hearing me talk about coal ash between last year and this year. And I want to thank the committee for their work during the subcommittee session in particular to help me perfect this bill, to get a piece of legislation out that I believe, and I hope the committee agrees, will be beneficial to the citizens of the state of Georgia. So, just very briefly, quick history, EPA has directed that all wet coal ash ponds be drained. And some dried and stored in place, some drained and the coal ash be dug up and moved to a solid waste landfill. The concern has been shared loudly and with great enthusiasm and emotion that our citizens want to know when these coal ash ponds are being drained in their communities. HB 879, in very simple terms, expands the current public notice that exists in EPD rules and regulations to require that the notice of discharge be also and additionally added to or printed in the local legal organ. I think the line numbers still match up. Just so very quickly, we are currently requiring written notice by the operator to EPD of their intention and or the beginning of a dewatering plan. There is currently information on the website by EPD and by the operator that the draining dewatering process, as it's called, has begun. So in lines 85, 6, and 7, basically, the new piece of legislation, the prior two sections I just mentioned, put into statute what is currently in EPD regulation. So 85, 86, 87 specifies that the notice of the draining process must be published in the local legal organ within 14 days of the commencement of the dewatering process. So just very quickly, the reasoning for that is, again, yes, there's written notice both on the operator and EPD's websites, and written notice between EPD and the operator. The problem has been is that the public doesn't know when to look at those websites to know when this dewatering process is going to begin. So again, codifying into law the 3 steps of notification: written, web, and now a notice in the legal organ of the local community newspaper. This gives the people who live in the areas where these coal ash ponds ample warning, notice, if you will, that the dewatering process is going on, so they can make decisions about whether or not they fish, boat, swim with they and their families in those areas where the dewatering is occurring. I want to thank Georgia Power. They were very, very helpful. We met with them 3 times in the off session. EPD as well was very, very helpful, gave some very constructive, positive comments, and have been very helpful in bringing this piece of legislation to its current stage. That's really the bill, and I'm certainly happy to answer any other questions.
The chair at this time will entertain any questions, if there are any from the committee. Number 22, Representative Gasway.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sorry I didn't ask this before. If in a case like where they had started dewatering and the hurricane comes through and operations have to stop, are they going to need to notify again when they restart, like a stop and start? Because I know this is a not exact science, but companies that are doing this are still figuring out. So once they've given notice, even if it starts and stops, are they going to be in violation?
No, the intent is, again,
if they don't give notice again, like if it stops and they start again, will they be in violation? I'm sorry, it's early.
No, not a problem. My brain's in the same scrambled mess yours is, Representative Gasway. So
Well, you're
You're
in deep trouble.
That's
then.
the nicest compliment Representative Gasway's had all day.
At least so far today.
yeah, Rep Gasway sits behind me on the floor, so we have a good
knows.
relationship. In any case, the current rules and regs require a notice to EPD that the utility has done what it needs to do and is beginning to dewater or drain their ponds. That's the trigger notice that triggers the 14-day notice in the legal organ. So to your example, a hurricane event certainly adds new water, if you will, to the pond, but in statute now and in EPD regs and rules, that notice has already been duly given, because we're talking about a continuation of the same dewatering process. It's notice. So to answer your question, no additional notice in the newspaper is required.
Thank you.
And thank you. Number 27, state your name and your question.
Representative Robert Dickey, thank you. Representative Jones. One thing that bothers me is noticed, and when I get a notice of something, it's usually a trigger for me to change my behavior or to take an action or something. And so I'm just thinking my district, Monroe County, 20,000 people, you're going to give notice of this action that Georgia Power is going to do, but it doesn't result in any recommendation from anybody on what kind of action they're going to do. What will 20,000 citizens of Monroe County then do with that information? And you know, it really triggers something else in my mind for those citizens. Are they going to call me and say, what's going on? And I'll say it's business practice of Georgia Power, what EPD is recommending they do, and it's no real problem. But why are we giving notice on a general business operation in this situation?
Yeah, thank you, Representative Dickey. Again, the statute as proposed, 879, does not specify what citizens or anybody needs or must do in response to the public notice. It's merely the fact that what we heard clearly in town hall meetings and other discussions throughout the state is citizens were upset not knowing what's going on in their communities. So the purpose here is to give citizens the notice by legal organ, in addition to the other 2 measures that I mentioned, that this process of dewatering is occurring in their neighborhoods, in the rivers, lakes, and streams that they fish, boat, and swim, and even that the public utilities may be drawing their drinking water from. So the bill doesn't specify what somebody's response should be to that notice, but merely gives the citizens the knowledge that something like this is occurring in their neighborhoods, in the rivers, lakes, and streams, so they can make a decision themselves as to how they respond. But your answer would be correct. The process of dewatering, the preparation that goes into that is all specified in federal, state rules and regulations, and this bill does not change that. Again, the only purpose here is just to let the citizens know that coal ash water in this dewatering process is entering the rivers, lakes, and streams in their communities, and then the citizens can react accordingly.
Can I continue?
We have 3 bills ahead of us, so
Yes, ma'am.
let me go to the other legislation and come back to you. Number 16.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a follow-up to Representative Dickey's question, I think is it not true that the original bill had the signs where the dewatering, where that water entered into our waterways, there would be signs posted that dewatering is going to occur, and that we had to remove that, and that would have allowed people that were fishing or swimming in the water to know in the event they wanted to change their behavior. And this way, they're just getting the information in the legal organ and online. Am I correct in
Yes,
that?
ma'am. You state the current status of the bill correctly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 23.
Being in that meeting when we were talking about the signs, my understanding is there are already signs being posted. Is there a representation of what that sign, what that information is currently containing?
Georgia Power, in our discussions, confirmed what you just said, Representative, that there already is signage at the outfall locations. And I want to add too, many of these outfall locations are currently in operation for other issues besides draining coal ash ponds. In fact, quite often the coal ash dewatering process goes through the same outfalls that they're currently using. So Georgia Power felt comfortable, as did the subcommittee, that there was sufficient notice by signage at the outfall locations such that that language was struck from the bill.
Thank you
I hope
very
that
much for
answers your
bringing this.
question.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Dickey.
Well, I guess I just have a problem with it being EPD, I assume, says this is is a safe practice, and there's lots of other practices that Georgia Power does day by day, or all of us municipal water and sewer authorities release water back into streams, and we don't require notice of that, and so lots of environmental practices go on each and every day throughout our state, and I just find this kind of odd that we would post notice to all our citizens without a recommendation for them to take action on a safe practice that EPD oversees and approves. So that's just my
I'd like
question.
to just very briefly clarify that.
Thank
Just
you.
Thank you, Representative. Very quickly, coal ash dewatering is distinctly different from the ongoing regular industrial discharge or final effluent discharge out of a water treatment plant. Those discharge issues require permits to be reissued, I believe, and renewed every 5 years, I believe. And those are discharges that occur on an ongoing, regular basis, and they are regulated separately. The dewatering or draining of a coal ash pond, to your question, Representative, is a uniquely different event. It occurs for a short period of time, relatively speaking, to the 5-year plus discharges or the annual or the regular discharges from those other two sources. But coal ash water discharge is a uniquely different event because it occurs in a limited period of time and not on an ongoing basis. So that's kind of the short answer for the difference.
Thank you. I think to clear this up, I've just found my EPD folks in the audience, and I think it's important that the general public understand that no discharge occurs if it's not safe to discharge. And so I'm going to ask EPD to speak to that briefly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Jeff Cowan with the Environmental Protection Division. All discharges would be required to meet applicable water quality standards. No discharge could be released without meeting those applicable standards in the Georgia Water Quality Control Act and rules.
Which I think takes care of some of the questions that were raised by the committee. Thank you very much. And Mr. Jones, if you'll go ahead and do your summary.
Well, really, that's it. I don't know that I have any additional thing to add. Again, we just want the public to be aware of what's going on in their communities. That's what the public has told us they want to know, and this legislation, with the committee's help, Georgia Power's help, and EPD's help, I believe achieves that.
Thank you. At this point in time, the chair would entertain a motion if it's the will of the committee. We have a motion. Is there a second? Now, is there any further discussion on this issue? All right, then I'll do the ayes and nays. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay. Having an opposite one vote, if you'll reflect that. Thank you, Representative Jones. Trying to make you chairman. But your process now is to go to rules and to do that paperwork. Okay, thank you. This is going to be a busy day for us, and I think in the next order, we'll take up, let's see, where is that? Representative McCall, Chairman McCall's bill, House Bill 885. And we should have a copy now in our folders, and then we should have probably another copy also handed out as insurance. And yes, if you don't mind, thank you, just for the full committee. And while Representative McCall is going to the mic at the table, please keep his brother-in-law in your prayers. Yesterday he had major surgery for cancer, removal of a tumor on his liver. So it's amazing you're here today, and we appreciate the fire drill this morning too, helping us get ready for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate you. Him and James' brother, he's setting up and enjoying morphine and doing pretty good this morning. So
we'll take that issue up later. Morphine.
Madam Chairman, 885, I hope won't get a whole lot of discussion. It's pretty straightforward. As most of you know that live anywhere between Carrollton and Augusta and Lafayette and Perry know that there's a 54 county burn ban from May 1st to September the 30th that deals with outdoor burning from yard trash to construction, where you pushed up bushes or trees or whatever. And it's an air quality issue. However, all this says, if you look on line 30, it exempts agricultural practices on parcels bigger than 5 acres or 5 acres or larger, whether the farmer owns it or rents it or leases it or whatever. And it limits it to vegetative materials. And the reason we need this is, if you look, that's pretty much land area, not quite half a state probably, but there's a lot of agricultural practices that goes on in those 54 counties, and certain ag practices have to be done on a timely basis. And from May 1st to September the 30th is a pretty long time not to be able to take care of some of the improvements you want to do to your farm. And all this is doing is just exempting burning vegetative material during those burn ban months on a tract 5 acres or larger.
Thank you. Chair will entertain any questions from the committee. Number 22.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Code section 1-3-3, I'm sorry.
133 is a list of definitions in the whole code. And 4A, I think, defines what agriculture is.
So here's my question. Let's just say hypothetically that I'm clearing 200 acres and I've got all these white oak stumps that I'm trying to burn. Would this allow me to keep burning those after May 1st? Because we've had so much wet weather, you can't get it done.
If it's for agriculture use, yes.
Yeah. Free range hogs. Does that qualify?
I hope you shooting them. But,
this heirloom free range hogs.
It's agriculture
Okay.
practices.
So
you what are those little short?
Red wattles.
Yeah.
So Representative Gasway, it's your day. You're branching out. All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, I have it is the proper time for a motion. I have it due passed in a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing no further questions, I'll take the ayes and nays. All in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay.
Thank y'all. And
So
if
we
you got a-
have-
If you have a question about if your county's in it, EPD has a good website. If you go to EPD's website and type in open burning ban, is that it, Jeff? Somewhere, and you'll scroll down and give you the list of the counties, but thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we take just a second as Chair of Agriculture and remind the committee, since most of my committee members in the state of Georgia are now urban dwellers, how important agriculture is to the state of Georgia.
$75 billion, and the other thing, it only takes 5 things to survive. That's all, it's 5. Food, clothing, shelter, air, and water. 3 of them come from ag, and God gives you the other 2.
Has he said that before, y'all, do you think? All right, and so we'll now take up our next bill, and to go to rules process, and that is House Bill 332. Chairman Watson, if you'll take the mic. And while he's coming to the mic, there's also additional information in the folders today for our committee members. If you'll be sure and check your folders for information. And Representative Watson, introduce Mr. Child with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good to be here again in front of this committee, and I appreciate the committee's help on this proposal. And it's also good to have Calder to start out. Calder Childs from the Leader's Office has been very instrumental in helping get this piece put together for us. And also just want to thank members of this committee again for your efforts through the subcommittee process. Chairman Smith and Chairman Harden and Chairman Nimmer and Chairman Knight. This group behind me back here on the back row, I'm not going to start naming names because there's too many of them, but everybody has been involved in this for a long time. This has been a process that we've been working on for 2 years now, and here we are. So I appreciate all the support and all the hard work from everybody that's played a part.
May I interrupt you for just
Yes,
a
ma'am.
second? So I'm looking at a front and back copy. I'm not certain our committee has front and backs on your copies. Some do, some don't. If you don't, it was for a reason, of which I do not know, so. All right, let's do the LC number. LC 440791S. How many need an additional copy of front and back? If you just raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So to our staff, can all right, just to help, because the bill is going to be involved. So let's just take a second. Pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You should have that, whether it's single sheets or front and backs. We appreciate the staff who is now going to go get us front and backs, but I think it is solidifying. All right, so what we'll do in this instance is let you go ahead and present the bill. And to our members who do not have the front and backs, we will get you those copies as soon as we can. Thank you. Again, LC number 440791S.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. And I guess just I know a lot of the members on the subcommittee have heard the why and the what and all that kind of stuff, but just if you have not, the reason this proposal came forward is, our state's been blessed with tremendous growth over the last several years, and to continue that growth, we need to also make sure that we protect our quality of life for the people of our state as we continue to grow and be the #1 state in the nation to do business. And that's what this legislation is going to do, is going to allow us to increase funding so that we can continue to protect the quality of life and also have economic development for our state at the same time. And I say that to start out, another reason of why is we're behind with our neighbors as far as spending goes to our natural resources, and we definitely need to get in line with that. And you can see we rank number 5, with Florida and North Carolina leading the race in funding for conservation across their states. Another thing that I wanted to point out, and I said this in one of the subcommittee meetings earlier, that most of us get this GMA paper, and this was an issue that was back in September. And the first sentence in this issue right here is, some Georgia communities view outdoor recreation as a nice little perk, but many others consider it a major quality of life issue resulting in a significant economic impact. And this was an article that talks about recreation and outdoors across our state, from Rome and Floyd counties to Donaldsonville, Seminole, Cartersville. Excellent article that talks about how good outdoor recreation is for our state, not only for quality of life, but for economic development. And the last report I just wanted to submit to the committee and talk about is, there was a survey done where we polled folks across the state, and overwhelmingly they supported any initiatives and efforts that we could do to increase funding for outdoor recreation. So that being said, you kind of know the why we're doing this and why we're bringing this forward and why it's important. So we'll get into the bill, and I'll just kind of start walking you through it. And I'm just going to walk through the bill, and then we'll probably come back and discuss the most important part of the bill, which is the funding part of the piece of legislation. But just starting out, this will be called the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Act. And what we'll be doing is we'll be authorizing the state to take up to 0.75%, as you see there in Section 1, of all state sales and use tax to be contributed to the fund. So what will we do with that money? As you flip over to page 2, we're going to use it for stewardship for our state parks, our state lands, wildlife management areas, support our local parks and trails, and preserve critical conservation land. Going down, we're just defining some of the things here in the bill, what conservation land means, things that are eligible. And going on to page 3, it talks about more of the funding component, which we'll come back to after we kind of get the 10,000-foot view of the bill. You'll see that we have a trigger in there for any time that the state may go into a recession again, that we have some precautions there that we can fall back on to make sure that we can have access to this money if we get ourselves in a tight. Down at the bottom of the page, it starts talking about who this is available to, any city, county, department, agency, or non-governmental entity. Going on to the page 4, you'll see another list of what we'll be spending the money on to support state parks. And as you'll see there, we've got that listed as number 1 and at the first of those 2 lines. And that was one of the things that, as we went through the process, we wanted to make sure we've got a lot of infrastructure that's out there already that exists, and we want to make sure that we get that infrastructure up to par and where it needs to be before we go out and do a bunch of other things. And so that was a big concern of this committee. And it was a concern of mine because I know we have a lot of assets out there that we need to do a lot of work on. Going on down, you'll see that there'll be an application proposal process that you have to fill out and go through. There will be a board of trustees that will be working with collaboration with the Department of Natural Resources. They will work together on proposals that are submitted to them. Once those proposals are finalized, they will be checked off on by the appropriations committees, and then they will move through the process. GFA will administer the funds, and the money will be released and the projects can take place. Going on to page 6, you'll start to see the makeup of this Board of Trustees. which will consist of 13 members. We did have discussion there. As you will see, we've got some ex officio non-voting members on that board. We wanted them there because we wanted them to have a seat at the table so that everybody is represented, from the Coastal Resources Division, from the Wildlife Resources Division, and from the state parks, so that they know what conversations are going on when they discuss those there. The Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor will also have appointments to the Board of Trustees, where they will make selections to also serve to help make decisions on how we need to spend these funds. And that kind of rounds out the end of the bill. So I'll come back to the most important part, which is the money.
Before you do that, will you speak to the companion bill, which is the constitutional amendment, and where that is, so they'll know that the relationship of this bill to that?
This will be a constitutional amendment. So we've already got the constitutional amendment through Ways and Means, and it's currently sitting in the Rules Committee. Upon approval of this committee of the enabling legislation, then we'll hopefully be moving forward into the rules process. But the constitutional amendment allows, as I mentioned earlier, up to 0.755% of all monies received from state sales and use tax to be used in the trust fund. And it's sitting in rules, waiting patiently. So we've had a lot of questions and a lot of concerns on the money, obviously, and basically to give you the background on that, we had to come up with a number. What's a good number? What's a good starting point? And so the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service puts out a national survey on hunting and fishing and wildlife associated recreation. And they've been doing this since 1955. And it basically lets the states know what we're doing and what we're spending. So the Department of Audits took that survey and they said, well, if you dedicate 75% of the sales and use tax derived from outdoor recreational equipment only, you would generate $40 million a year. So we felt like starting out in an effort to build trust, this is a huge deal to make sure that that everybody does what they're supposed to do and it works and the purposes are being served, that we would start out with a $20 million number. 75% of the survey's funds being $40 million, we would go to $20 million to start out. Well, I don't believe in coincidences, but if you take the math from the survey of 75%, and you take all state sales use tax, and you take up to 0.75% of that of all state sales and use tax, that number is around $40 million. So we didn't want to create a burden on retailers. We didn't want to create any more bureaucracy or burden on the Department of Revenue. So by taking up to 0.75%, which is the maximum amount that we could use in this fund, would be $40 million, give or take whatever the statewide sales and use tax number is. Numbers, to give you a hard number from 2015, it would have been $40,427,647. And at 0.40, it would be $21,561,412. So that's where we came up with the funding part of it. Is we can't base, we would have stuck with strictly outdoor recreational equipment sales and use tax, but retailers don't segregate those items. So yes, we have the survey, but we cannot base anything in our Constitution on a survey that comes out from anybody. We've got to have hard numbers, and we've got to be able to back it up. And we're backing up our math on the survey, which coincidentally, is the same numbers that we're looking for to start out this proposal, with the General Assembly having the ability to go in and raise and lower the .4 number as we see fit and as we move down the road in the years to come. So I hope I didn't confuse anybody any more than that on that. But I don't know if Carter wants to add anything to that because he has worked diligently on this. But I'll take any questions, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Before we do that, just a little housekeeping. So we have handed out from our bill presenter 2 different explanation sheets. So you should have 2 sheets like that. And by now, all committee members should have all the pages to LC 440791S. If you don't, please let us know. Okay, sorry for that mishap. This is the proper time for questions, so I will start writing down the numbers. So number 23, say your name and then state your question.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Madam Chairman. Representative Gilligan and Representative Watson, I cannot thank you enough for your patience with me, because I know I asked a lot of questions, and you incorporated a lot of my concerns into this. So I thank you for that. And I also want to thank you that you briefly spoke to H.R. 238, which is the amendment that will, this is the enabling legislation.
That's right.
One thing that I find very fascinating in that amendment, and I don't remember if you told everybody in this committee, but there is a 10-year sunset on that, and that is another source of comfort for us. So I just want to thank you for that. Really, it was more of a comment, but thank you for your patience with me.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Number 22.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Dan Gassaway. I want to thank you too, but I know we're on a tight schedule, so I just want to say, is it not true that this bill and this legislation, if it passes, will give us a funding source that will allow us to tap into tens of millions of dollars of additional federal money that we're currently not getting for the state of Georgia? And this is not, this is Pittman-Robertson, Wallet-Bro money that is excise tax that we could be bringing into this state that we're not doing now to help hunters and fishermen. And I just want to thank you again, and I would hope you'll stress that fact to the other representatives, because this is a great thing for Georgia.
Thank you. Number 21.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. John Corbett, District 174. I just want to thank the author of the bill for bringing this, especially the part for providing funding for military buffering around military bases. Being on the Military Affairs Study Committee, that's huge. As we went around the state, visited our 9 bases over the last 2 years. That's be a great help to help us to support our bases. They're a $25 billion economic impact to our state. So I just want to say thanks for bringing the bill.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Number 15.
I'd like to call a question, please, ma'am.
How much money's in your pocket? I have one more question, if you don't mind, then I'll recognize you for that. Number 11.
Abel Mabel Thomas, District 56. My question was, when he stated, just a minute ago, a representative stated that we were missing out on federal funds. So I don't know what kind of federal funds do we get dealing with conservation. Is it a particular pot of money, like Medicaid or something like that?
No, but I may lean back here to the back row and let some of my friends that are more involved.
From what I was just told, there are dollars available within the Department of Interior and Department of Agriculture for state conservation efforts.
Okay, very good. And I just want to say also, I'm honored to serve on a committee that's so conscientious as it relates to our conservation and making sure our natural resources are preserved for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I apologize, I missed your, it didn't flash the first time. And then we'll recognize Representative McCall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Watson. Thank you so much for bringing this bill, and it is much needed. and it is on time. It is going to benefit not only our children and other adults, but our military, veterans, and mental health individuals. While I was at some of our conferences nationally, we had this discussion, and I am so excited and pleased that you brought this bill. My question, though, and I may have missed it, how are the board members going to be selected, and who's going to do that?
The speaker and the lieutenant governor will each have 3 appointments each.
Okay.
And if you'll see on page, or my page 6, section 12-6A-10, you'll see the appointments and positions that we're putting on the trust fund, which would be DNR commissioner, director of state forestry, EPD director, commissioner of agriculture, our ex officio members. You see there?
Okay. Yep, I see it now.
Yep.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, Representative McCall. What's your number? All right, you recognize you have called the question.
If you would allow me, I'd like to defer to Representative Buckner.
So are you
please.
withdrawing your call the question?
No, I'm not withdrawing that. I'm just deferring to her.
I've never seen a lateral pass like that before in my life. But anyway,
We wanted to make history on this history-making bill.
I hope so. I hope we score.
I move due pass.
Okay. I have a motion do pass and a second. So now we have a motion before the committee. Any further discussion? Chair will call the ayes and nays. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay. The chair would like to take a moment here to thank the bill presenter. I have had several questions related to me by the committee and by others, and you worked to get your presentation in a form, I think, that was easy for our committee to understand, and I hope it'll be very easy for our peers in the General Assembly to understand as well. So thank you. Thank you for all that work, and to all of you who have worked so hard to see this come to this point. I know it's been 10 years, so thank you.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
All right, please again check your folders for announcements pertaining to today, and then be on the lookout for others. We stand adjourned. Thank you.